Are you feeling as confused as Abby is feeling right now? Jason is on a campaign to get her back. She thought she had gotten away, but he's found her, and he wants to have a relationship with their daughter. What would you do in her situation? Please comment, and I promise I'll read and give my feedback. Now let's get back to it. Jason and his mother left, and Abby collapsed on the couch. She told him that she needed time, but she wasn't sure if it's what she truly wanted. Those 6 weeks in the Gordon estate has taught her that she hadn't mattered. Jason was still seeing Naomi, and his mother had disliked her on sight. Before we continue with the situation as it stands now, let's go back to those weeks I spent living in the Gordons' home. 2 days after Jason brought me home to meet his mother, I had awakened to an empty bed. A note on my pillow said that Jason had gone to the office. I got up and quickly showered and got dressed. "Good morning, Mrs. Gordon," I said. Mrs. Gordon was seated at the dining table. She looked up at me and nodded at me and stood up without finishing her breakfast. I sat down at the table and Mrs. Primrose set a fresh fruit cup and asked if I wanted a full breakfast. "Just toast and coffee, please," I told her. I watched as Mrs. Gordon left the house. So much for her warming up to me, I thought. After breakfast, I explored the house. There was the living room, library, sunroom, and Jason's office. I decided that the library was as good a place to pass the time as any. I settled to read. Someone was a fan of the In Death series, and I picked one to read. Mrs. Primrose came to let me know that lunch was ready. I really wasn't hungry, but I sat alone at the long table to eat. Then I went for a walk in the garden. It was beautiful, but I had no one to share the joy of it. I went back inside. I took the book up to my room and fell asleep after a few chapters. That was my life until the 4th week when Jason told me that he wasn't going to work and wanted to spend the whole day with me. I was overjoyed. I felt like a bride again. I was a little upset when the first place he took me to was the doctor. Jason insisted that he didn't want children right away. I agreed and decided what precaution I was comfortable with. Next, he took me shopping. I enjoyed that very much. I picked out a scarf for his mother, thinking that it might break the ice between us. Lunch was at a diner Jason picked out, and then it was more exploring. We visited a museum and walked along 5th Avenue. I window shopped, and then Jason took me to the Essex house for dinner. We drove home with me exclaiming how wonderful the day had been. "I had a wonderful day with you, Jason. I know you have a business to run, but I truly appreciate you taking time off for me. I realize that I was neglecting you. We've only been married a month. We should still be honeymooning," he said, giving me a tight smile. I blushed because Jason hadn't touched me in weeks. I was beginning to feel neglected. I hardly see him. He leaves early in the morning and returns just in time for dinner, and then it's off to his home office. When he climbs in bed, I pretend that I'm asleep because I could feel how cold he was to me. That night, however, he was very attentive, and I felt hope bloom in my chest again. However, 2 days later, he went back to being cold, and his mother even colder. I vowed to try harder to make friends with his mother. "Mrs. Gordon, is there anything I could do for you?" "I don't think so, dear. I have some errands to run. I'll see you later," she answered coldly. "Can I join you?" I asked with hope in my voice. "No," she replied and hurried out. That evening, I told Jason that I'd tried everything to engage his mother and nothing's worked. "You have to give her time, Abby. She's had this house to herself for a long time. She's set in her ways. Just give her time." That evening after dinner, we were all sitting in the living room when Jason suggested that they host a dinner party to introduce me to their friends. Mrs. Gordon's face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. We can invite our friends and your associates." "What can I do to help?" I asked. "Oh, dear girl, just leave it to me. Don't you worry, it'll be perfect," she replied. I sat there listening to them plan the party. Not once did they ask my opinion or if I had any ideas. Saturday morning, Jason awoke as usual to get ready for the gym. Every weekend, he goes to play badminton or racquetball. I was feeling particularly lonely, and I thought I'd call my father. We hadn't spoken at all since the wedding. My cell phone was dead, so I picked up the house phone to make the call. "Jason, I don't know how much longer I can tolerate that woman in my house. You promised you'd get rid of her," Mrs. Gordon's voice said. "Be patient, Mother. I have it all planned. It'll be soon," answered Jason. I held my breath and gently put the receiver down. What exactly did Jason plan on doing to get rid of me? I already knew and tried to accept that his mother didn't like me, but whatever Jason was planning sounded serious. Jason returned after his time at the gym. He was smiling and asked me to come outside, that he had a surprise. I went in there on a flatbed truck set a mid-size SUV. I launched myself into his arms, kissing him and thanking him. I'd almost forgotten what I'd overheard earlier. I was out and about the following week. One morning after Jason had left for the day, I went into the bathroom and pulled out the package I'd bought the last time he took me shopping. I stared at the pregnancy kit for a long time. I put it back in its hiding place and left the house. I drove into the city determined to enjoy the day. I had been doubting I'd conceived because Jason had taken me to see the doctor and the test had been negative. I'm late and now I'm beginning to think that it had nothing to do with stress. Still, I enjoyed my day in the city. At lunchtime, I stopped at a diner. I had to wait for a table and I sat at the counter. The diner was huge and there were lots of people enjoying their food and their companions. I stopped suddenly. Jason and Naomi were sitting at a booth. It didn't look like it was a casual meeting. They were sitting close and he leaned over to kiss her. I got up and left. I felt sick to my stomach. It had all began to make sense to me. My whole marriage was a sham. My father was too eager for us to date and marry. Jason must have something he's holding over him. Not that my father can force me to marry anyone, but there was something there. When I reached home, I went into the bathroom and pulled out the test. I was sitting on the floor when the two pink lines appeared on the test strip. I'd suspected for at least a week, and now it's a reality. What was I going to do? He clearly didn't love me or want me. He's got Naomi. His mother hated me. She said it herself, she can barely tolerate me, so I know I had no ally there. It was then I made my own plans. If they didn't want me, then I'd make their wish come true. I was ready. The morning of the party, the house was abuzz with wait staff, caterers, and Mrs. Gordon orchestrating the whole thing with precision. I stayed out their way. I'd bought a dress that made me feel invincible. Emerald green, and my secret was still safe. When the guests started arriving, I smiled and played the perfect hostess, thanks to my role at my father's casino and restaurant. I made sure that everyone felt welcomed. I worked the room like I'd been born to do it. A woman Mrs. Gordon's age cornered her and said things that started to make sense. I don't know how you can stand to look at her. What was Jason thinking, marrying a gambler's daughter? Has he no heart? Several others said things along those lines, and I continued to make my rounds, making sure everyone was comfortable. When Naomi showed up, I tried not to feel anything. As a matter of fact, since spying them at the diner, I felt something crack open inside. I felt nothing. The only thing I focused on was the following morning. Naomi made sure I knew she mattered. She was glued to Jason's side. I pretended that I didn't care or know anything. "Hello, Ms. Harris. It's nice to see you again. Welcome to our home," I said with a smile. "Oh, sweetheart, you are so sweet." "Can I get you a drink?" I asked. "Please, and make sure to add some ice," she said dismissively. I nodded and went to get her drink, feeling Jason and Mrs. Gordon's eyes on me. At dinner, Mrs. Gordon seated Naomi next to Jason, and I was seated on the other end of the table. I pretended that I didn't mind. I made small conversation with the guests on both sides. When it was over, I was infinitely glad there was people to clean up. I was tired. The guests were gone, but I couldn't help but overhear Jason, his mother, and Naomi comparing notes. "Jason, how much longer are we going to play this charade? You must get rid of her soon," his mother said. "And I'm tired of this cloak and dagger thing we're doing." "I'm giving you a week to end this, or I'm leaving," added Naomi. "I had someone take some pictures and they'll be ready soon. We had to find a suitable male to pair her with. Don't worry, my love, she'll be gone soon, and my revenge will be complete. I can see it now. I'll throw her out with nothing. She'll have nothing. I don't think even her father wants her back. You've thought of everything. You promised I could watch her humiliation. I want to see her broken. Yes, and we'll celebrate after." I quickly ran up to the bedroom I still shared with Jason. When he came up, I pretended to be asleep. I curled into a tight ball to keep from crying and waited for morning. It was Saturday and Jason had gone to the gym. I got up and packed. I took only what I'd bought. I left everything he bought for me. On the dresser, I left my ring and a note. No one saw me when I left the mansion. I quickly threw my suitcase in the back seat and drove off. I had it all planned. I drove to the airport and parked the car in the lot. Then I took an Uber to the Long Island Railroad. then took a bus to Connecticut. Jason came home and showered before he saw the note. Then he did a frantic search. In the closet, he found the only clothes missing were the ones I'd bought. I didn't take any jewelry, and I'd left the wedding ring. He questioned Mr. and Mrs. Primrose. They knew nothing. His mother hadn't noticed that I'd left. He thought that if he called the police, they'd find the car and me. But a flatbed truck was rolling into the drive with the car. It was returned safely. Jason had called my father to no avail. He didn't know where I was. Jason had become consumed with finding me. He couldn't eat or sleep. He was a bear at the office. Every few days he'd call my father and the answer was the same. He didn't know where I was. After almost a year later, Naomi had left and married Richard Winston, a business competitor. Jason, a shell of his former self, hired a private investigator. 2 months later, he reported that he'd found me. Jason opened the door himself for the private investigator. Mr. Clark hadn't sat down when Jason pounced. "You said you found her. Where?" he asked. Mr. Clark made a show of pulling out his notebook. He was stalling. "Mr. Clark, we aren't paying you to sit there and stare at us. What have you found out?" Mrs. Gordon asked. Mr. Clark sighed. "I did find one Abigail Marshall living at number 24 Star Road in Hartford, Connecticut. She has been living there from November when she left these premises. This is also the house she grew up in. She is working at the local library and she is living alone." Mr. Clark read from his notebook. "Is that all?" asked a disappointed Mrs. Gordon. "Yes, that's all." Mr. Clark stood up to leave and was ready to forgo his pay, but his integrity got in the way. "Look, I don't pretend to know what really is going on with you people, but you sent me to find someone you painted as some kind of low life and found a decent young woman trying to live her life. She has not done a blessed thing to merit what you've said about her, and incidentally, I don't care if you pay me or not. Goodbye, Daddy." Mr. Clark let that slip out and walked toward the door. Jason grabbed his arm and turned him around. "What did you mean by that last crack?" Jason growled. "What does it sound like? I think I understand why she left this house. I wouldn't want to raise my kid here either. When she left you, she was pregnant with your child. She gave birth 5 months ago. Congratulations, it's a girl." Mr. Clark pulled his arm from Jason's grasp and continued on his way. "Wait, Mr. Clark. Please forgive me. Here's your fee." Jason placed an envelope in his hand and escorted him to the door. As he got into his car, Mr. Clark shook his head and resisted the temptation to call Abigail to warn her. Instead, he drove home intending to get falling down drunk. Jason returned to the living room and dropped into a chair. He looked miserable. "Jason, you have to go after them and bring them back." "After what we've done to her, she'll never come back," he answered. "I was against this scheme of yours from the very first. I admit I didn't like her, but it was you who ill-treated her," Mrs. Gordon stated bitterly. "My God, Mother, don't you think I know that? I've agonized over this for months. He said it was a girl. I have a daughter." He got up to pour himself a drink and downed it in one gulp. "I didn't know I would be suffering the fate I'd planned for her. I wanted her to fall in love with me, and I wanted her to be crushed when I dumped her. Well, you're suffering now. How much more could it hurt if you tried to see them?" Jason walked up the stairs to the bedroom he'd shared with Abby. The note she'd wrote him was on the nightstand. He picked it up and read it again for the 1,000th time. The first time he read it, he'd gone crazy. He ordered everyone to be on the lookout for her. He'd call the police stating that his wife's car had been stolen in the hopes that when they found the car, they'd find her. But Abby had outsmarted them all. She had the car delivered safe and sound. She had left all the jewelry, clothing. She hadn't taken anything that wasn't hers. She had left everything behind except his heart. Somehow, somewhere along the way, he had fallen in love with her. He hadn't realized it until she was gone. Naomi had tried to capitalize on the situation and began talking about wedding plans. He remembered how suddenly she looked shallow and dull to him. Abigail was the woman he wanted, and she was gone. For months he suffered. He couldn't eat nor sleep. He had given up the pretense of living. In a last-ditch effort, he hired Clark, and Clark came through. So now, my friends, you know the backstory. Whose team are you on now? Team Abby or Team Jason? Please comment and share. Like and subscribe. It encourages me to bring you more of these stories.